Hey there! So today I want to cover something in the vlog different than what I normally talk about. Normally I talk about geeky things or stuff that's going on in my life at the moment. Right now I want to talk about something that happened a long time ago, and it was inspired by a photo I saw today in this tweet from Ian Thompson. I have a background when it comes to London, which, whilst a lot of people would think, oh wow, you did so many great things, you saw wonderful stuff, it's actually not that good, and it's not something I'd ever want to go through again. But I want to talk about what happened through the years of 1986 and 87. Part of it is really that there's going to be other family members who probably see this, and they're going to get some idea as to what was going on. But I also want to try and help other people that possibly end up in this type of a situation, because it's not something that everybody goes through. But I think that when you're in this situation, you need all the bloody help you can get. Especially if you were the age that I was when this happened. So, where to start? When I was 13, 14, there was a massive problem that suddenly happened. There was a crisis within the family, and this crisis was with my little sister. So I ended up in a very weird situation where I would get packed off to a farm down in Romney Marsh, and I'd be left there for 3, 4, 5 weeks, sometimes longer. And especially when I ended up with chickenpox, I'd stay there extra time. But then on top of this, so when I go to school Monday through Friday, and I wouldn't be at home. I would be living at a neighbour's house, and then my father would come and pick me up on the Friday afternoon early from school. I'd normally leave school around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we would have to drive up through Kent and into London. And every week it was the same routine. It was like up the M2, off at the Danson interchange, down Darkhill into Deptford. Every time I went past the Henry Cooper pub on the Old Kent Road, I'd point out, oh, look, there's the Henry Cooper, and my father would say, you say this every week. And it was the same routine. Like, it sort of became comical that this car trip would have to happen. But we would invariably end up in one of two places. We were either pretty much just behind Oxford Circus, or we were in Pimlico, staying at a friend's flat. And we had to do this every weekend. And people would be like, why are you going up to London so often? And I could never tell people what was going on at the time at school until really I had enough information to actually understand myself what the hell was going on. So, come Saturday morning, I would normally, wake up, I'd go down Regent Street, go around Oxford Street, do whatever. And then, sometimes I'd have to go to a movie premiere and sit with famous people. Other times I would be, I'd be sitting there minding my own business, and next thing you know, you've got the cast of The Bill suddenly delivering McDonald's hamburgers and stuff. I would have, Derek Jameson would drop by, Terry Wogan would drop by. I'd sit there and watch my dad have arguments with Timmy Mallet. It was a really messed up point where there was a lot of things going on. And Christmas time, like I remember running around Hamleys, got the run of the store, and back then this was billed as like the world's largest toy store. And I was running around this place and being told I could have anything I wanted as long as it was under about £50 or whatever. But why was all this going on to me? Well, to be totally honest, this is why I wouldn't wish it on anybody. We were tied to a hospital. And specifically we were tied to a children's ward. My younger sister, who was 8 at the time, had osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer. And I don't know what the numbers are now, but I remember when this was explained to me back then, the numbers were something along the lines of, there was a 15% chance that you would survive, but there was only something like 7 people would end up going through this particular ward a year. So basically they had everybody died, and every couple of years one person would survive. So we happened to be there on this one year. And after the film premieres and stuff, like, I'd go back and I would sit down with a guy who, he was a couple of years younger than me, and we'd sit there and watch this laundry going around in a washing machine. And he would be absolutely amazed by it because he's never seen something like this. And meanwhile, this guy, as I say, was a couple of years younger than me. He had come from the Middle East, was running through the desert with his father and his uncle, and a helicopter came up over, machine gunned his father, killed him in front of him. His uncle died pretty much within the hour, and he himself, I mean, he was probably about 10 years old. He had been machine gunned up the legs and across the ribs, and his arm was also not in a good state. Basically what happened was, through basically politics, they were like, look, we're saving this child, and they send him to London, and next thing you know, I'm sitting down with him watching laundry going around in a washing machine, knowing that I would be going home at some point, and so would he. But what he was going back to was a family with no father, no uncle. I have no idea where his mother was. I never saw her. It was really, really messed up. So of course, like, I'd come out of the film premiere, and then next thing you know, you're back in a children's ward again, looking at lots and lots of kids with no hair, IVs and stuff. And this is where I ended up with a real bloody problem. And the problem was lack of information. Now, in the family that I grew up in, people didn't communicate. And this came out in a previous video. I'll link up right now to the time that I became Irish. Like, communication isn't exactly a strong point, but what happened here was something even worse. When you don't know if your sister is going to live to next week or not live or whatever, you really have no idea what the fuck's going on, and you end up in a very, very bad place. As a sibling of a kid that is going through cancer, on the one hand, you're worried about, like, what's going to happen to the family. Sitting there watching your parents falling apart, unable to communicate with you because they're so distraught anyway, but on top of that, you can't get any information out of anybody else. Nobody else is asking them the hard questions. So as a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old, I was having some severe problems trying to work out what the hell was going on in life. It's all very well and good when there's all these people trying to distract you with all these parties and things like this to try and cheer you up, but in 1 minute you're dealing with a psychologist who's asking you about how you feel about death and this type of stuff, and then the next thing you know, you're at school telling the year principal that you need to take a week off because apparently we're going on an emergency vacation. Because the doctors basically said that she may not be around another week, 2 weeks. Like, this turns into a really messed up situation for the siblings, and this is where if I had one piece of advice, it would be, if you have a sick child, but you've also that child has siblings, you have to communicate with the siblings. You can't just keep it to yourselves and not communicate with those people. Like, I remember some of the things that were going through my head. I would end up in some really, really bad places. Sometimes I'd be wondering, it's like, well, what's going to happen to the family? Is the family now going to split up, or what, is going to happen? Like, is my sister going to live? Is she going to die? Like, so, ultimately things worked out. She actually survived, and, there's a story for another day as to why we now haven't spoken for 20 years. But that period that I went through in London, basically, it's hard to explain, but it's almost like there is a period of really grotesque sadness, and that sadness is like a cloud that just hangs over the time, the place, and the people that were in it. There were a lot of people that I haven't seen pretty much since those days, but the hospital itself, it was the Middlesex Hospital, it no longer exists. So I guess there's a piece of London now which, I probably would not have gone back to, but now I don't have to worry about, accidentally running past it or something like that. But the whole Oxford Street, Regent Street stuff, I loved that area, but that whole place, I mean, it's like the two ends of the extreme. You've got real happiness where you've got all these famous people coming to visit you every day, and at the other end of the equation, it's like death. It's staring you in the face all the time. Your parents aren't talking to each other, they're not talking to you. If I got packed off to the farm, then I might speak to them every couple of days, but even then there was no information as to really what was going on. Normally they were after information from me, like how tall was I at a certain age, or how much did I weigh, or stuff like this. Basically, they were after physiological information about me to try and apply it to my sister, and it was a very, very messed up time. But if I had one piece of advice, as I said, to any other parents that ever find themselves in this type of a situation, if you've got a really chronically sick child, like the siblings, they're going to end up messed up if you don't communicate with them. Like, they probably know that you love them, and they understand that all of your time and effort is having to be dedicated to the sick one. That's not the problem. The problem is they don't know how to plan. They don't know what's going to happen next. They end up in a state of anxiety that you just would not believe. And if you don't talk about it, they're not going to talk about it either. And that is actually the most damaging thing that I think could have possibly happened. So that's what I wanted to cover today. It's a bit of a dark one, but it came back when I saw this photo, and I was just like, you know what, like, I need to talk about this, because there is a message that, if I was to tell other people, this is what you need to do in this situation, it is communicate. Like, tell your other children what is going on. Like, be blunt, just tell them. Like, don't leave them in the dark, because that's what happened to me, and it's probably cast a shadow throughout my entire life as a result, in the way that I look at things and the way that I treat people, and just the way that I guess I look sometimes at authority. If people aren't being totally clear with me and being open and honest, then there's a bias that I have. And it all stems back from this particular time. Like, I remember my parents, they always say to me that I was a moody teenager. Well, you know what, like, there's a damn good reason for that. Like, so anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I might come back to this story another day when I've got the strength to cover some of the other angles of this. But that's really the important part. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll speak to you soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.